Hi, this is Danny Ryan, VP of Business Development and co-founder at ThreeWill. And I'm here this morning with Pete Skelly. Pete Skelly is our Director of Technology for ThreeWill. Pete, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Dan.
What we'd like to cover in this episode is a white paper that Pete had written last year on what we call the new business operating system. And it's really about the Microsoft Cloud, it's about Office 365, and how to create business value. What I wanted to do is to start off with maybe a little bit about who's the audience for this? Who did you write this white paper for, Pete?
So the white paper was originally designed to inform CIOs, CTOs, IT pros, solution architects, anybody from technical buyer to decision maker to managers or solution architects about what Office 365, Microsoft's on-prem services and software, as well as Azure, has to offer from a business value perspective. And across those three, sort of the CIO, CTO level, how can they maximize their investment in building a business strategy on those products and platforms? From an IT pro perspective, really learning about what that Office 365, Azure, and on-prem solutions can offer and how can they configure and control that environment overall. And then from a solution architect's perspective, really looking at how did I take those three sort of components, if you will, Office 365, my SharePoint on-premises environment, and then the Microsoft solution stack that exists on-prem, and really enable design and delivery of custom solutions that add business value.
Awesome. So with that being the intended audience, I guess my next question would be, why were you writing this? It seems like you were sort of cueing into some anxiety that you see from some customers, but what did you want to accomplish from writing this paper?
I think really trying to focus on some of the community, some of the information that was out there once SharePoint 2013 launched, and very close to that same launch was Office 365's launch as well. And what we started to see was folks having a bit of anxiety or uncertainty around, some significant investments that were made in SharePoint on premises, all the way from 2003 to 2007 to 2010. Organizations really used SharePoint, customized it, and there really was some contentious arguments in the community around, is SharePoint dead? How am I going to get value out of SharePoint in the future, et cetera. So really wanted to focus on kind of putting our spin and what we really saw as a positive spin to what Office 365 and SharePoint 2013 means to our customers, and kind of get some feedback from others as well. From Microsoft's perspective, the messaging that Microsoft has for mobile first, cloud first strategy, how does that impact us as a services business? How does that impact our clients? What do the audience, that kind of three levels of audience, how are they going to make decisions for their business and move forward? Do I migrate to the cloud completely? Do I stay on-prem? How do I integrate those environments? So it really was an attempt to kind of look at the combination of Office 365, SharePoint 2013, Microsoft's Azure, and the cloud ecosystem as a whole, and what we term the new business operating system, or the NBOS, and look at how that can work into an enterprise strategy. So there's a lot of architecture options. There's some financial impacts of moving to the cloud. What are my customization options? So really trying to focus on how do I deal with all this change? How do I get value out of, quote, moving to the cloud? What is the cloud, first of all? Really kind of trying to define that and help folks understand it. And then overall, look at what our view of the world is from an Office 365, Azure, and cloud ecosystem perspective, and how we think that whole ecosystem can drive innovation and really help enterprises create collaborative solutions, and how what ThreeWill calls working together better. So that's really why we put this together. It was about trying to find some solutions, or define some solutions, and inform folks on what does it really mean. I've got a strategic investment in SharePoint and potentially Office 365, and how do I make the best of that? And how do I get value out of that?
That's great. I really like how you started out the paper with giving providing context, sort of giving a background on what led up to where we are today. And you mentioned in here sort of like 4 different phases that you've seen with building these types of solutions. The first phase that you mentioned is the phase of creating collaboration portals. Sort of characterize that for me.
Sure. So the original vision of SharePoint was, kind of a collaboration workspace. So trying to build on that kind of internet boom of everybody wants a website, every business had a website, and trying to get internal departments to start to use those websites for collaborative spaces. So trying to get IT staff, to get out of the business of creating content and being involved in every little decision, give folks a way to collaborate, store documents, have a web presence. So really early on, it was a provisioning engine. There's several folks, Ted Pattison included, that have kind of indicated that that's really what SharePoint shined at early on, was turning that provisioning engine and enabling IT to deliver basic list management, document libraries, search capabilities, and other things that were the cornerstone of SharePoint early on. So that really was the first phase, kind of getting a collaboration portal set up for end users.
And the second phase is one where we're focusing in on customization.
Yeah, the second phase really started, at least in our opinion, somewhere around 2003, when the third-party community really could start to develop components for SharePoint. That's about the time frame of web parts. So, being able to create and integrate additional data inside of SharePoint, it's kind of when, at least to me, that's about when I started to get involved in SharePoint in a former life on a kind of cursory note. And you could at least, mash up some data, get some web parts created. Wasn't necessarily the easiest thing. It was a bit cumbersome. But you could at least start to do things like branding. You could start to customize and get some web parts that actually added business value or grabbed different portions of data. And then 2007 really started to look at how do I increase that and put some formal deployment mechanisms around branding, around customization. So then you really had some things take off with making configuration capable. Deployment was a little bit better in 2007. And then 2010, SharePoint 2010 really started to look at least to us, the best part of SharePoint, looking at all of the services that it provided and giving you a platform that you could build on. So we wrote a white paper for SharePoint 2010 that really looked at using SharePoint 2010 as a business platform. It gave you a huge array of services that you could jumpstart projects on and get huge value out of right out of the gate, and then look to kind of do that 80-20 rule of 80% could come right out of the product itself, and then look for value add by customizing or delivering 20% in customization. So that customization phase really kind of came to the fore in 2010.
Nice. And then you have the third phase is moving more to today, where we have folks who are looking at moving to the cloud. Tell me about that phase.
Yeah, so 2010 really, SharePoint 2010 really enabled some great things. The server-side object model got a lot better. There were some things that started to look like web services. You were enabled to kind of get data and extract data a little easier from web services. But in about 2012, most enterprises had grown accustomed to kind of cloud applications. So there were really the dawn of those shortened release cycles. Microsoft had kind of made a release and kind of made some declarations with 2013, so to speak, that you started to see Office 365. BPOS was I think at that point probably 4 years old, somewhere in 2008 time space. So you really started to see some of the cloud app model developments, and 2013 basically came out and said, we're going to go to a cloud first model where you're going to have to learn to interact with this new app model that 2013 represented. It enabled you kind of to develop in a different model. So 2010 and 2007 SharePoint versions suffered from IT pros having to worry about is a custom solution going to bring down my entire farm because the coding best practices weren't followed, for example. So the cloud first model really enables you to develop apps that span not just SharePoint but start to integrate across different work streams. So if I need to access things from Outlook or Word or PowerPoint, the new app model, sort of that cloud application model, really enables you to execute custom code outside of SharePoint and lets you work in that kind of out of process world, that mobile first, cloud first world, and integrate across multiple work streams. So I can have my knowledge workers who are in Excel or Word have access to external systems, not just SharePoint, but additional external systems like Yammer or Outlook, or even third-party systems like SAP or Salesforce or others. So that cloud app model really starts to drive home the point of, if you're working with SharePoint, you're probably going to start to be off the server more and more. So,
good. So it sounds like, I guess to get something clear for me, the app model. This is something that's new to 2013, and it primarily sounds like you can build your apps either. I guess if you're still running on premise, you can still do what you used to do. But if it's going into Office 365, you've got the app model is the route in which you're going to need to go. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe it'd be helpful to even define what the app model is for those who may not understand it. Apps for Office and SharePoint are based on a new application model that they share a common approach for extending any of those applications. So SharePoint inclusive, web apps, Office apps, including Word, Excel, PowerPoint. It brings that value of apps that we kind of understand in devices to applications that you would use on a daily basis. So I don't want to go so far as to say a write once, run anywhere version, but certainly across the Microsoft stack, being able to have an application that you write once but is contextually aware to understand I'm running in the context of Outlook, or I'm running in the context of Word, or I'm in the context of a ASP.NET MVC app. You can write that code once and have that code actually be contextually aware of, while I'm in an Outlook app, I might want to actually integrate with creating an appointment or saving a document to SharePoint. Or if I'm inside of Word, I may want to pull information out of a database and kind of use that Word document as a form, or fill out a bill of materials in order to generate a contract quicker. So that new app model is built on web technology. So just web standards like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, REST, OAuth. So if you're a web developer, as far as I'm concerned, your world just got a whole lot bigger. I know the web. Now I can develop applications that are Microsoft centric as well. So if I were developing, websites using, Python and JavaScript in the past, that world's now open to me. It's a pretty exciting time as far as being able to leverage your skills if you have different skill sets. Don't know C#. Now you can truly develop really compelling applications that integrate across the Office 365 and SharePoint stack. So
cool. Now next up we have phase 4, and I want you to tell me about the future. Will Microsoft stock go up or down, since we're talking about the future? Oh, baby.
No,
sorry, I had to throw that in there.
Certainly, the past performance does not indicate future performance disclaimer. I mean, I don't know that. I can't claim to be a tarot card reader by any means, but I don't know. In my opinion, I think what's the future of Office and SharePoint? I really am excited about where Microsoft's headed. I think if you look at some of the things that thought leaders in the SharePoint space have said in the recent past, folks like Andrew Connell or Chris O'Brien, Jeremy Thake, Doug Ware, Joel Olson, I mean, the list goes on and on.
You didn't put my name in there, though.
I hadn't heard anything that you were kind of being prescient about where Office was headed, so you're not on that list. Those folks and many others have kind of given their opinion on, okay, what's the pros and cons of this new app model. I tend to take a pragmatic approach, especially with our clients where they're enterprise clients. I don't like speaking in absolutes, classic kind of consultant answer, but you've got customers that have significant investments in on-prem and SharePoint, Office. You've got knowledge workers that they just know how Office works, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, that combination of how much enterprises have invested in SharePoint and Office, how much productivity and efficiency already exists from existing tools, I think the app model really presents a huge opportunity for businesses to create value and get value out of what their knowledge workers do, and the way that the consumer world is kind of combining with what businesses do on a regular basis. So everybody has a laptop, right? Everybody has more than likely a consumer device. And to me, this is just a perfect marriage of how can I get the same application, not necessarily the same interface, but the same application or functionality that I might have on a laptop running Windows 8 and my iPhone. So if I'm, approving an invoice, or I'm trying to log into an HR system on my laptop, the UI might be different, but now I have the ability to create applications that have value that can span an iOS device, an Android device, a Windows device, and give folks that kind of, consistent look and feel, the ability to kind of integrate across all those apps. So the app model to me really is a huge architectural shot in the arm to creating those kind of stable, performant, scalable solutions. Yes, it comes with a lot of change. So are you going to be able to write kind of that siloed SharePoint app and take advantage of just what SharePoint gives you? No, you're going to have to learn some new things. You're probably going to have to integrate with Azure. You're probably going to have to learn to write resilient applications that can withstand a network outage, for example. Mm-hmm. You're probably going to have to learn a little bit about browser, features like local storage or session storage. You're going to have to learn a little bit more about architecture and security. But someone at ThreeWill, Sean Hester, commented that SharePoint was stuck in this kind of evolutionary backwater for years. So if you look back at the kind of timeline of SharePoint, some great things happened across that time frame from 2003 to 2013. Things like Ruby on Rails, things like the kind of introduction and explosion of Node.js apps, things like MongoDB, all those types of things. And SharePoint kind of just, even ASP.NET MVC came out in that time frame, and SharePoint didn't take advantage of it. So if you look at SharePoint, it's kind of stuck in this evolutionary backwater of kind of bolting things on as it could. And I think, in our opinion, being able to kind of jump out of that, use the app model, not only did the pool of development opportunities increase, but the capabilities at your fingertips, kind of designing the right solution for the right problem, it becomes a whole lot easier. So the future of development to me isn't just, do I write a SharePoint app, or am I a SharePoint developer? To me, I think it becomes, I'm an office developer, or I'm a productivity developer, or in our case for ThreeWill, I mean, our core strength is collaborative applications. Integrating multiple collaboration tools, and so that really lets us kind of look at the services. In my opinion, what Microsoft's doing with Office 365 is delivering all those component services as SharePoint, and it's nothing new. Microsoft says this, but they're delivering those services that you can consume. Things like the Office Graph or SharePoint Search or Outlook, calendaring, task management. But then you can combine those in unique ways with business-specific workflows or other third-party tools. So I think the future of Office development, and I say Office development, not SharePoint development anymore, specifically so that you can kind of look at what's that new business operating system, the combination of Office 365, SharePoint on-prem, search, mobility, integration with other systems. It's really about composable, scalable, elastic, location transparent infrastructure that kind of lets you build cross-platform integration that benefits your enterprise.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's funny because I think I got a taste of this week. I wrote a blog post on the Salesforce app for Outlook, and part of it was the time that I realized, I can use this, and on my iPhone, I can use this. On my Windows, you can see my setup here. I've got both a Windows laptop and a Mac. I can use it within Outlook for the Mac. I can use it, and it's just sort of clicked for me. It's like that's what I want to have. Is I want to write it once, and I want it to be able to use that across platforms. And I think Microsoft's really is getting that, and it's going to be a real exciting time to write apps for this. And well, we're about up to time. I really appreciate you getting us kicked off here. We're sharing more about the white paper. We'll have some more episodes here where we'll go through the details of the white paper, and definitely invite everybody to download it off of the ThreeWill site. Just go into the resources section, and the white paper is available there. It's also available on SlideShare at slideshare.com/ThreeWill. And Pete, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you doing this.
No, thanks for asking me, Danny.
Yeah, you betcha. Thanks everybody for listening.